Yep. Now, are we ready?
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. This is City Council, Monday, December 11th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Mayor McGrath,
Here.
Tracy Snyder,
Here.
Jen Mazias,
Here.
Tom Nimes,
Here.
Dave Anderson, John Hopkins,
Here.
Jared Trimbo,
Here.
Thank you. And if everyone could do as John just did and pull your mics a little closer, it really does help when you talk right into the microphone for those folks online. Our next, not item, I guess, but let's do the play. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is approval of minutes from November 13th.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. Motion by Tom, second by Tracy. Any comments, questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of monthly expenditures via roll call vote.
I'll make the motion to accept the monthly expenditures. Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Jared to approve the monthly expenditures. Roll call, please.
Jared Trimbo,
Yes.
John Hopkins,
Yes.
Dave Anderson, Tom Nimes,
Yes.
Jen Mazias,
Yes.
Tracy Snyder,
Yes.
Mayor McGrath,
Yes. And that passes, thank you. Next item is public comment. Is anyone here tonight for public comment? We have a nice full audience. If you are, please step forward and if you could state your name and address. And then just jot, there's a paper, there should be a paper there to jot down your name and address also.
Okay.
And
Do you want us to do that first or make our comments?
either way, we're flexible. And then hopefully that microphone is turned on. Maybe give it-
Testing.
Yeah, if you talk right into it, it's on.
Okay.
And we do limit public comment to 3 minutes, just to give you a heads up.
Pretty strict on that.
Does that include me writing out my address?
Yeah, we'll give you, we won't start until you're done writing out your address.
Okay. Hello, I'm Matt Edmonds. I'm a member of the Washburn Tennis and Pickleball Association. I'm here to express my support for resurfacing the lower courts here in town, the east side courts, to convert the 2 tennis courts into 4 pickleball courts. As you may or may not know, pickleball is extremely popular all over the country, and it's no different here. We have a wide range of levels of play here in Washburn. Lots of different ages of folks playing. Last summer, it was not unusual to have 15 or more people playing in our open sessions of pickleball. The Washburn Tennis and Pickleball Association schedules times for outdoor court use and at the club on an app that we use so we can involve lots of different people. Let's see. There are currently about 80 people registered on the app to use, so, and those are primarily local people. As you're aware, the east side courts are in pretty terrible shape. There's grass growing in the cracks, and the lines are faded and chipping. The courts could be resurfaced to meet the needs of tennis, but there's really no longer a need for 2 sets of tennis courts. Many of our pickleball pickleball group are also tennis players. And we just haven't found a time when there have been numerous tennis players there, so there's plenty of space for everybody. One of the most exciting elements of pickleball in Washburn is that it brings people together from many different walks of life, ages, and so to make social connections. At any one session, there might be a 20-year-old playing with a 70-year-old, so it's a pretty neat game. Tennis and pickleball have considerably different needs in terms of court dimension, net height, length, fencing. Because of pickleball's significantly smaller size, two tennis courts can be converted into 4 pickleball courts. On 2 tennis courts, 8 people can play at one time. With the retrofitted courts, twice as many people would be able to play, easing the crowding and waiting experience that we've been having. Jeff Olson is going to later outline our proposal plan for resurfacing. I just want to add that I have been in touch with several contractors who are excited to help us with this project, including myself. We also have a large number of associated members who are excited to volunteer for the project. We're hoping for the green light so that we can move ahead with what would be a wonderful improvement of recreation here in town. So,
Great.
did I get under 3 minutes?
Thanks, Matt. You did. 3, 2, 1.
Go. Hi, my name is Craig Shanks. I've lived in Washburn for several decades. And I play pickleball and I play tennis. And I wanted to come here to address the need for resurfacing the court, the lower court, to make it safe for pickleball. And I hope you'll give attention to the fact that pickleball is really gaining a lot of popularity these days. There's a lot of people playing, and seems like there's more every month. So we really need a safe resurfacing of the lower court, fill in some holes, make it level, and so I'm just here to support renovating the lower court. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jewel Pickard at 17 East 3rd Street. Just a question. I think later on in the agenda, there's a line item about unpaid ambulance bills. And I'm just wondering if when that comes up, if someone could speak to if there is a collection policy with the city, and if so, what circumstances would there be where the bills wouldn't be collected, and until they're uncollectible? That's just my question.
Thank you, and welcome. Oh,
Did you
need
want
a
to bring my own?
Here's one.
I'm Susan Paul, and I'm also a citizen here in Washburn and on the rec committee, or the park committee. Oh, notice that faux pas, rec committee. Because we don't have a rec program right now in the city of Washburn, and I think that the improvement on the pickleball scene could maybe morph into something for younger players. I do believe that the kids do learn the game of pickleball within their PE class, and we aren't seeing a lot of school-age children playing now, but I think that there's room for that to happen. I think there's enough of us in the group that are excited at the idea of expanding this into more age groups. I think one of the ways that could happen is with some summer lessons like they do for tennis. So I think that pickleball can actually maybe be seen as a rec component for school-age children. And I know we have got a letter of support from the PE. Sherry Collins. Collins, she wrote a letter saying that she also thought this might be a good opportunity for kids to get out and have some fun, so, thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to speak now on this, or would I be better to dialogue when it comes up on the agenda?
You're welcome to say a few words if you'd like now, and then if you're here representing the group for that item, we can also talk with you then.
I'll wait till then.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone else here for public comment? Anyone online? All right, seeing none, we will move on. Our next item, mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. We do have appointment of the election board. Is that, yeah, that's in your packet. Prior to tab 1, the list of folks who I'm looking to either reappoint or appoint. And I would look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept this list.
Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Mary. Thank you to everyone who's willing to be on that election board from the public. And with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Scott will be in touch with any details on that. And then next, under this item, I would like to ask Karen to step forward and give us a report from the beautification committee.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Common Council. An update on the progress to date of the Bayfield Street Beautification Ad Hoc Committee. 3 points. The committee continues to meet twice a month. Secondly, we've recently met with Jerry Schulte, the Director of Public Works Department, had a very good discussion about what are some of the realities that Public Works has regarding Bayfield Street and some of the ideas that we currently are considering for beautification. And thirdly, a survey asking for input regarding how to improve the look of Bayfield Street after the major reconstruction projects is now completed. We've gone through a couple of versions of the survey. The committee is currently reviewing it and taking the survey as to see if it works. And the committee members have assured me that it's simple and easy to do. The survey is slated to be available for residents starting the 2nd of January, and it will go through the 19th of January. We will be using various methods to communicate the availability of the survey, including the mayor will highlight it in her report that will go out with the water bills either late the end of December, first part of January. The library and the Chamber of Commerce have graciously volunteered to assist residents who do not have internet or computer to complete the survey. So we will share that information in the publicity about the survey, because there certainly are people for whom that would be a barrier. The online survey would be a barrier, and we want to make sure that everyone has access. So those will be 2 locations where residents can go and complete the survey. And finally, those are the 3 updates I wanted to share. But finally, initially, you, the mayor, and the council wanted our committee recommendations at your April council meeting. The committee is requesting this evening that our recommendations be presented at the May council meeting. We've determined that May is a more realistic time frame given the complexities of this task. We thought it was really straightforward, but there are lots of things to think about, research to be done, and so I would hope that you would be agreeable to having the recommendations come in May. That is my report. I will answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your work on this, Karen. It's exciting to think that this could be the last holiday season that we don't have lighted decorations.
Yes, we've talked about that.
Is there any reason, Scott, that timing-wise, that you see a problem with the May date for a report to council? Looks like, is there a consensus that would, I mean, it's not on the agenda to vote on or
I
anything.
don't see a problem with it.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Then maybe I'll even add a third location to your list, Karen, for to provide assistance for people to take the survey. I'll make some office hours specifically dedicated to that, and I'll be here to help people do it online.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, our next item is discussion and action on recommendation to approve ordinance 23-007, amending the zoning code regarding off-premise signage and outdoor lighting. That's tab 1 of your packet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Tom. I'm going to just let everyone know that this has been a complicated topic. So council had requested and passed a resolution to request exemption from the scenic byway that would allow for some of these changes to go into effect. Once that resolution and request was submitted to the DOT, they scheduled a meeting with the Scenic Byway Advisory Council. And it was mentioned, that action was mentioned to the National Scenic Byway Coordinator, who then expressed concern about an exemption to a downtown after the designation, and was afraid that that meant that we were trying to bypass federal rules and regulations. So they put a hold on the state Scenic Byway Advisory Committee meeting, and we have had discussions back and forth about what does that mean, what would it look like, what can we do within the designation versus moving forward with the exemption and possibly risking the whole thing. And it's, I had to have a special meeting with their sign expert to discuss specifically the existing non-conforming off-premise signs that we have, including the Steak Pit sign, because that's the biggest thorn, is trying to work within the shape of that sign. And so I did receive verbal approval and confirmation via email that that sign, even without exempting the downtown portion from the byway, could be changed as long as it stays within the general size and shape and existing lighting that was used originally. The shape of it could be changed to be more, just rectangular. And so, so that's one of the biggest problems that would be able to be solved. The only part of that that I think would be problematic is the digital signage component. And I guess to be safe, it would be better to remove that digital component and just proceed with the rest of it as is, if you are amenable to making that amendment to your motion.
Yes.
Yeah, both of you, okay. So then the motion would be to approve the ordinance but removing that highlighted sentence in G. Okay. So thank you for your patience as we have gone through these deliberations back and forth. I think it's wise to just, and that's a separate decision that we'll have to actually address at the January meeting then, whether we would have to actually pass a new resolution withdrawing our request to exempt, to be able to then forward that to the DOT so that they can have a clean and clear idea of our desire or lack thereof to remove the downtown from the byway designation. So, so tonight is just approving this ordinance minus the highlighted section, and everything else I think should be fine. So with that said, are there any questions?
So the main change, one of the main changes here is that planning commission has decided that they don't need to see some of this stuff.
Yes, yes, that's part of this whole change in the ordinance is taking that off their plate so that, and not, you know, it doesn't take it just off their plate, but people bringing things forward for
Right,
very
because it's
basic
so
sign
minor.
permitting.
This is so
Yeah,
minor. We've never had any, it's just like
a rubber stamp.
a rubber stamp. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yep, sounds good.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion and action on acquisition of new fire truck, including input from towns and discussion on financing. That is tab 2 of your packet. And we did hear from the chief last time, and we have this additional detail. So, are we deciding which one here tonight? Is that?
That sounds like that's what it was,
Yeah.
right?
And I would look for a motion unless we have any questions for the chief or for Scott or.
I would make a motion to select the recommended fire truck from the department, which I believe was the first one, right? Custom fire. Custom fire, yeah.
I'll second that motion.
And do we need to specify equipped with the X12 500 horsepower versus the L9 450?
Okay.
Fire chief is here.
Yep. I mean, there is a difference in cost
In
there,
cost.
so. And I think, Mark, it looked like you said that the smaller engine would work, but the bigger one would be more appropriate and.
Yeah, it comes down to, you know, the responses in town, you know, where we're going a couple blocks, you're not gonna see any difference whatsoever. When we go out of town, you know, if we're heading out Washington, our current engine will top out 15 to 25 miles an hour, whichever truck we're in. If we go up Highway 13 to the north, you know, start climbing the hill by Whiting Road, you know, it's a significant hill. Head out into the town of Washburn, you know, our most direct travel route is up Wannabu Hill. You know, with our older engine, it feels like you should just get out and push. Our current engine one, you know, it does okay, but it is limited somewhat. It's a big cost increase. It's $68,000. You know, what it's gonna get you is that torque, extra torque for that 50 pounds of horsepower. Doesn't sound like much difference, but there's a big increase in torque. So it will give the truck a better ability to climb the hills out of town, you know, driving out County C, up the hill, everything, almost everywhere we go, we're going up a hill, it seems like. But we do feel the 450 horse would be adequate. But I guess that is a decision for you guys, It's 68,000. It will let the truck get to some fires, a minute or two quicker. Most of our fires, a minute or two doesn't make very much difference. But, there are times where 10 to 15 seconds can make a big deal. So I don't have a real good answer for that. I think we would say we would prefer the 500 horsepower, but if you feel the 450 is what we can afford, I think we can live with that as well.
Thank you. So percentage-wise, we're looking at.
The same percentage of the $1 million.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that, it's a long-term, purchase.
Sure.
I feel like doing the 500 one is probably that, is my motion.
Tom?
Do you know the difference in the amount of torque between the two?
Don't quote me exactly. I believe it's 1,200 pounds and like 1,600 pounds. It's a big increase in torque. Yeah.
I think we should better off with the bigger one for sure.
Yeah, sure, go ahead, Matt.
One question on this is, do you have any ideas or information on whether it's harmful for the engine to be running, assume you're running at a lot higher RPM with a smaller engine? Would that in any way decrease the longevity of this truck?
That's what I was thinking,
I think they're, the better answer or the easy answer would be, yeah, it's going to help to have an engine that's not working so hard. But I don't believe we would, other than response time, I don't know if we would see a big difference. But the 500 horse with the higher torque would run a lot smoother for sure.
Well, if you were the person who had that fire that could make it where it could make a difference. So Jen, you had a motion. You made a motion to approve the request for the custom, and you're saying with the 500.
The 500, yeah.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
I got Tom first, so I'll take Tom on that as the second. Any other questions for Mark or
Have we
Scott?
talked to the other towns?
Yeah,
We have not heard anything. Have you, Scott? Scott sent letters to all of them, asking for questions, asking to meet if they wanted.
I think we have one.
Yes.
Unless there's anyone else here. I did speak with the chair of the town of Barksdale today. They have a meeting tomorrow night, but we went over everything and just discussed essentially the worst case scenario that if we're successful in borrowing this on a 20-year bond, the cost with interest would be divided over 20 years for them. Did a rough calculation as to what that would be, and he was fine with it. They understand that there's a need to keep equipment up to date. So they did not anticipate anyone being here tonight, but appreciated the information. Just want us to keep them informed.
Okay, anyone else with questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're happy.
Yes.
We need to get you a mini one for under your Christmas tree, Mark.
And it's good looking, the pictures I like, it's super nice, right?
All right, our next item is the hot topic of the evening that everyone's here for, discussion and action on recommendation to convert 3rd Street East tennis courts to pickleball courts. This is tab 3 of your packet. And it sounds like the Parks Committee is recommending the conversion, and so what the council is looking to do is recommend or approve the change in use of the 3rd Street tennis courts. And tonight we have with us.
I'm Jeffrey Olson. I live in Washburn, and I'm the now president of the Washburn Tennis and Pickleball Association. And I wrote a letter that is in your packet that explains what our request is. Also provided some detail on what is planned. And it's to be noted that these plans are draft, the budget is draft, and we really haven't put a lot of real detailed work. Well, it's detailed, but we haven't put anything final in here. Just looking for a go-ahead if this is something that we can work with the city to get those courts renovated and change to pickleball courts. Realizing the tennis courts on the hillside park are the better tennis courts where most people play tennis. So not taking away the opportunity to play tennis in Washburn.
Sure. Can you clarify, Jeff, are you looking at finding funding for this, or are you asking for approval?
Washburn Tennis Pickleball Association is looking to fund this with grants, with donations, and with fundraising. So we really aren't asking the city of Washburn for any funding. We will be, of course, closely working with the city and the Public Works Department to kind of go hand in hand down the road with this, but no, we're not asking for funding.
Very good. Does anyone have questions for Jeff? Or for me as the newest pickleball player in town? Tracy?
I have just a comment to say that, Bayfield doesn't have any tennis courts or pickleball courts. And so this is an attraction from out of town as well. And that feeds the city of Washburn businesses. So to me, it's a win-win. It really is. And from a health perspective, more people are getting out and being active, and the potential for a youth program is exciting as well. So I'm totally in support of this, and I am a pickleball player.
And quite a good one too, I must say. Real quick, just a follow up on that and the mention of health. So the health department has a grant that I think would make a lot of sense to apply for this project, maybe next year. But just to make sure you look into that one, that was the one that helped fund the outdoor equipment over on by West End Park as well. Jen?
Yeah, I would say the Parks Committee, we had a great discussion. Some of the things we talked about was obviously, we asked if there was any issues and conflicts with the tennis, and there isn't. We haven't had any complaints or anything like that. We talked about how, working with Jerry, because we do know at some point that we did have some different not erosion, but water runoff kind of, as tennis courts are high, there's some low, so at the same time, if there was a chance for working with Jerry, if there was any kind of things that needed to be done there to improve the drainage, things like that. So we had a good conversation, and everybody at the, our Parks Committee was in favor of it. And we also talked about how Parks Designated Fund could be available for a matching in the future. If they got to the point where they needed that, they could come back to the Parks Committee, because we are starting to make a budget. Trying to make a budget. It's on one of our next agendas to come up with a budget for that Parks Designated Fund. Even though right now they're not asking for it, but I think that's an appropriate use of that fund if they needed something for matching for a grant to get it going. So, with that, I'll make a motion to change the use of that property from the tennis court to a pickle.
I'll second that.
And to work with the City Parks Department on the details.
Okay. And you're fine with that clarification. Okay, so a motion by Jen and a second by Tom. Are there any other questions, comments, or discussion? Again, even on the indoor court, there were literally 20 people there the other day, between the new beginners that were starting and then the group that comes in to play at all the different levels. It's pretty cool. So thank you for your work.
Yeah, thank you.
And to the Parks Committee for their work in hashing this through. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. All right. Our next item is discussion and action on amendment to agreement with Cooper Engineering for redesign of bathroom for West End Park Campground Expansion Project. Who would have thunk a bathroom would be so complicated? But it's true, those Huff Cut bathrooms are just cookie cutter, and not meant for year round. And I think it's really good that we caught that at this point and can make that more amenable to what we're looking for, which is a year-round outdoor restroom for the public, for people who are utilizing the park in all sorts of ways. So with that, this is tab 4 of your packet. And I would look for a motion on this to begin discussion.
Someone. I'll second.
Motion by Mary. And I'm gonna give a second to Tracy this time. I'll call it a tie. Jared, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, did they not know we were looking for a Cooper Engineering at the time, or how come you got this?
Well, I guess I'll say yes, but I guess when we started the initial discussion, to them, the most obvious sense was just these Huff Cut designs because it's a plug-and-play type system. But when Nicole was here last month and we had this discussion, then she looked into it more and asked Huff Cut, and then found out that no, it is not a 4-season building.
So she caught it.
So she caught it, yes. Yeah, after our discussion last month. So, which
We
was,
talked the whole time about it being,
yeah.
year round, and that was one of the
Yeah.
selling points.
I wonder if it was
And I think it's one of those points where we're having that discussion here, and I'm working with Nicole on this part over here. So she's not necessarily catching all of it. So we have this assumption that yes, it is, and then lo and behold, it's like, oh no. And she determined that by calling the company
Yeah.
and found that out.
So we were initially saving money by not having to design the bathroom, and now we're having to design the bathroom.
Yes, except that, according to Nicole, again, with her costs, she believes that actual manufacturing of
right.
that will cost less
The stick shield,
than
yeah.
Huff Cut. Being built on site by a contractor will cost less.
Right, those
So-
Huff Cut buildings are expensive.
Yeah, so it will cost us more money for the engineering. When we actually get to construction, it will be lower. Don't exactly know how much lower, but it will be lower.
So,
It is very weird.
yeah, I mean, that's was my main question, was
Yeah,
that part.
I guess I'm just like, why are we paying for more engineering when this is what we asked for?
Yeah.
In the first place, of course.
So the cost of it will be less than with the product that's designed, so.
Were there added engineering costs then, and was there? I mean,
That's
how much of
that's
that-
what this amendment is.
But my point is, do we have to pay for an oversight? Like extra money for the engineering costs?
The oversight is,
For her-
will already be included within those contracted expenses. Yeah.
So it's just part of the project that we
Yeah.
anticipated out, so we won't have to pay
It'll be part of the
additional oversight.
But additional engineering in the beginning,
Yeah.
because we're not using these Huff Cut plans anymore.
So if you look at those estimates, it'd be $135,000 on the high end of the estimate versus 178, which is what it would have cost for the Huff Cut building. So we're actually reducing our overall cost by making this change, which is very weird.
I think we need to track on that. There's no way we save money by, I don't know, but maybe it's because I know those Huff Cut ones are like concrete, and so it's just weird. So is it gonna be as cheapy and as
Sturdy
easy
and-
to clean? And that's the beauty of those Huff Cut ones, right? They're like in there, you just spray them out.
Well, that comes down to a matter of how we would want the building design. So if we want brick outside versus wood, it's going to cost more.
Right.
According to Nicole, they would just situate the inside furnishings with the same thing, same type of, I guess, siding,
the hub, well, I guess hub whisperer, the same type of cleaning site that they have at other bathrooms.
Okay, all right.
So,
I'm just always skeptical when you say 50 grand.
Well, Huff Cuts make it
I know they're making, I
a
mean,
pretty penny off of those.
yeah.
I mean, and she even went to Hopgut and asked, what if we insulated your building, you know, what would those cost? And obviously, it'd be 170 plus more.
Okay.
To get insulated.
All right, well, maybe it's gonna work. Okay.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and are there any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item, discussion and action on resolution 23-019, adopting the 2023 Harbor Commission budget amendment number 2, and that is in tab 5 of your packet.
So moved.
Second.
That was a motion by Mary, second by Tom. Amendment number 2, and that's just kind of moving money around. Everyone okay with that? Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
We went over that one. We went over that.
I said that's over.
Next item is discussion and action on EMT bonus request. That's tab 6 of your packet.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mary, second by Jared. And we do have Jeff here tonight. If anyone has any questions or comments, and I know my comment is going to be, thank goodness for the 6 of you that have carried that department through this year. Oh my gosh.
I myself, and I'm sure the other 5 people on that list, thank you as well for okaying this, because it's been a tough year.
Yes.
And it's continuing not to get a whole lot better, but we're hoping. There's a class starting in January. As of right now, we've got anywhere from 1 to 2 people that are going to be taking the class. And there's perhaps some other changes coming down the line.
Did you have some recent graduate from this last class or no?
No, we've got a gentleman who has expressed interest of joining our service. He is part of the Forest Service, and he will be graduating in December.
Yep.
Once he gets done with his national registry. He's taking it down in Rhinelander.
Mm-hmm.
And I've already spoken to him, and he has expressed interest in becoming part of the service as well. By the time he gets done with his national registry, his licensure, getting his 10 runs in with us to get acclimated to everything in our service, hopefully we'll get him on board by spring. We've had one gentleman who was a paramedic with Ashland, who lives outside of Washburn, who has now joined our service. He just got his 10 runs in last week, so now he is a primary EMT as well. So
Great.
it's give and take. We lose a few. We lost one last week. He lives in Ashland. He was a full-time EMT with Barnes, and his rent went up astronomically in Ashland. He said, I cannot afford to live here anymore. And he honestly looked for a good 4 or 5 months and cannot find anything. And he has turned in his equipment and he's moved to Minocqua for right now. So
Okay.
we give and take.
Yeah, hopefully the Forest Service is paying for trying to get more EMTs for the Forest Service. And so hopefully we'll produce a couple more in the next couple, not me.
Jennifer, come on.
My husband's thinking about it, and some of the other guys, and some of the other people there at the Forest Service. And so Aaron was kind of the, trying it out this year. So hopefully with the Forest Service incentives that we can get more EMTs in our community. It's just not Washburn, but Hayward, Rhinelander, Lakewood, Leona, and Eagle River. So we're hoping to get some more people up there too. So hopefully we'll be able to get maybe one a year to add around here.
That'd be great.
That would be great, yes.
And we pay for it, which is nice.
Even better yet.
Added bonus. Speaking of bonuses, any other questions, comments, or discussion? Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Please share the good news.
I will. I already got the letter written up. Emails will be going out tomorrow.
Much appreciated.
Thank you for allowing me to do that.
Absolutely. All right. Our next item then is discussion and action on the 2024 wage schedule. That's tab 7 of your packet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Tom. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and action on agreement with Clifton Larson Allen LLP to conduct TID number 2 closure audit / report, tab 8 of your packet.
And so moved.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Jared. Thank goodness you found, what's his name? Clifton. Thank you, Clifton. Any questions on that?
So I have just a question about,
And then Jen.
why is it so difficult to find someone to audit that?
Number one, there's a, dare I say, a shortage of auditors. Government auditing has become far more expensive, and with all the new accounting rules and government processes, it has really pushed out the small-time, I'd say mom and pop type auditor that would typically do this. And so we are left with the large firms, and the large firms are obviously going to be more expensive. The second uniqueness with this is an audit that needs to go back 28 years and look at those records. And so that is a lot more involved and time consuming.
Jen.
Yeah, well, we don't need to get into great details of the TID districts, because they get a little confusing, right? And they go back so long, they're established like before lots of us were here on council, with the exception of some people. So I'm assuming, so it's worth it, right? Like, I mean, $30,000 to close one out, right, is not a small number. And so I just want to hear your opinion. Like, I don't even know, but like, this is worth it, right? Because we talked about establishing a new one. Haven't we been talking about that? Just give me a little smidget of your knowledge.
So under state law, we are obligated to conduct this audit upon closure and provide a report to the other taxing jurisdictions that gave us permission to create it in the first place.
Okay.
So one, we are obligated to do that. If we do not do it, there isn't necessarily a penalty from the state. However, it may cause bad relations with the other taxing jurisdictions should we want to create a new district in the future. They may not be as keen on approving that if we are not forthcoming with records and how we manage TIF districts, because TIF districts are the responsibility of the city to manage. The other taxing jurisdictions have to give approval when they are created, and then they only get an annual report of activity thereafter. So they don't really have any say. It's under our control from that point. And if they don't believe that we do a good job in managing them, there may be more questions in the future.
And the benefit of having the districts is way more than the $30,000 that we have to spend at the end of the year. Oh my God.
I learned that today, and the answer is yes.
Yes, right. And I mean, I just think like a lot of people don't understand and know, so I just want, those who are listening in our audience, like to know, like $30,000 seems like a lot, but overall the benefit that we get from doing this and the taxes breaks and incentives for is big.
Correct. The TIF districts are the best economic development tool that communities.
And we have more.
We have another
Wall Street.
district that is we have a District 3, which is midlife at this point. We would have right now the ability to create another small one, but with the expiration of TID 2 this spring, we would have the capacity, should we have projects or development area that would come forward to consider creating an additional one to maximize the life.
Thank you. I just wanted everyone, I need a reminder on these things every once in a while. I know some people are new and I don't know, maybe you understand these districts, Chair, maybe you don't, I don't know.
Scott, didn't they change when they redid the shared revenue? TID did not change that this year?
So there were some state law changes that were approved this year that would not affect our existing districts. They will affect new districts that are created. And so that will go into effect any new district created after October. I can't remember all of them, but the main change is going to be on the benefit to the city upon closure. So current state law states essentially that when we, for example, what's going to happen next year, when we close TID 2 is, well, let me just back up a little bit, just to kind of give everyone a little brief on how this works. With TIF districts, the taxing jurisdictions, the county, the school, the technical college, and the city give up their tax revenue on any new development within that area for the life of the district. Meaning, even the city, when we have development that occurs within that district, we do not get that tax revenue for our operating budget. It's going into the TIF district pot to pay for the expenses related to what we had to do to make that development happen. So when we expire the district, one, any leftover dollars in the fund are going to get dispersed to the taxing entities. And then two, under current law, for the city, half of our portion, and our portion right now is 50%, is what 50% of the tax bill, is going to be divided between tax relief and additional revenue for our operating budget. And so I hesitate to say that it's all going to do that depending on how all of our debt financing turns out here. But there should be some amount of tax relief next year with the closure of the TIF district. And that is, at the end, after 28 years, now here's the benefit for the development that had occurred during that time. So this is a long-term process, a long-term tool. And then new district, like that one was 28 years. The current one only has a life of 20 years. It shortened the life of these things a few years back as well when that one was created. So it won't happen again for us most likely until 2035 when TID 3, or if we decide to close it sooner. So they don't happen very often, at least for us. Big cities have multiple districts. So Ashland is probably, they have probably a good half dozen in the works right now. So.
Clarifying question, do we need to make this contingent upon legal review?
The audit report?
Yeah.
I would say no. The audit report, it's going to be done per accounting standards. If they don't have all the records, they're just going to have to note it, and it's going to be a report. So there's a concern that we may not have everything that's necessary going back that far. I've done a lot of work, and that's one of the piles on my cabinet in the office. We believe that we have most of it anyway, but they have to You're
Sorry,
talking.
the agreement.
The
I was
agreement,
just gonna
yes,
clarify.
yes, I'm sorry.
Legal review of the agreement
Should
itself.
be on legal review, because I wasn't able to get that in time.
So not as the audit itself, but the agreement, yeah.
Correct.
So, Mary and Jared, are you okay with that?
Understand it.
Clarification?
We get it.
We-
Understood.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thanks for some additional information.
All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, somewhat related, discussion and action on proposed 2024 TID number 2 and TID number 3 budgets, tab 9 of your packet. And we are looking for approval of these budgets.
So moved.
Seconded.
I'm going with Mary, and is that Tracy?
Yeah.
Okay, any questions on these? Comments or discussion? So there were 2 different drafts. And seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and action on final 2024 budget adjustments and resolution 23-018, adopting all 2024 budgets and expenditures.
Make a motion to accept.
Second. Motion by Tom, second by Mary. Any questions?
Just a question, there needs to be an adjustment on that truck? Does that need to be in the motion?
So I did want to clarify that. So in your box, I had put a revised resolution that would include the adjustment for the truck that the Harbor Commission wishes to purchase. And the correct amount is $5,210,787 for that resolution. That's with the Harbor Commission budget of $218,428.
Okay, so the motion is for those numbers then?
Correct.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and action on writing off certain outstanding ambulance bills. This is tab 11, and in public comment, we had a question, so a little background perhaps on how this is normally done, what the process is leading up to this anyway. Scott, you care to?
So this is something that we look at each year. We also look at utility bills to see if there's anything from that would need to be written off. We've also looked at whether or not there are any uncashed checks. Sometimes we issue checks and people don't cash them. So we've had that in the past as well. So this is essentially a year-end clean up the books kind of a agenda item that we have. This year we only have some ambulance bills, and most of these are going to be from the past when we were doing the ambulance billing ourselves. However, there are times when the ambulance goes out and will be called and care for individuals who simply do not have any assets or funds to pay. And so when we did bill, and we continue this currently, once we send the bill, we send a second note, I don't know how many notices we send, but if there is not payment, we do send to collection agency. And the collection agency does go through their mechanisms and process to attempt to collect, and they do, in many cases, obtain some funds. However, some individuals don't have the assets or funds to pay them. There are other estates, if an individual passes and the estate is closed and there is nothing there, there isn't much that we can do about that. And so we're left with these amounts. Cannot discuss the specific individuals involved. That would be a HIPAA violation. But that is the basic background of that. So we do use a collection agency. The current billing service uses the same collection agency for unpaid bills. I don't know if Max has any other comments on how they go about that or not. But.
Yeah, I can, the question specifically, policy. Scott touched on the policy of these collections. We do try to collect it initially through the city itself and then refer it to a collection agency. The second question that was asked in the public comment was, why would there be any instances where the collections were not completed? The ones that are past the statute of limitations, the statute of limitations for collecting on these is 6 years. And I think that for almost all of those that are being written off this year, there were attempts at collecting that were done. Whether that, I think in most of the cases with the collection agency, it's Range Credit Bureau does these collections. They won't write off accounts unless they absolutely can't find the person responsible for payments. So I think in every one of these that has been written off, it's past the statute of limitations. We just have no current location information for this person. So you can't serve them to get a judgment against them. You can't start a collection action. And it's not worth the additional expense to try and push for that on some of these accounts. That's why they get written off. I do know that I think we're nearing the end of cases where this is an issue, but there were some when the city was doing its own billing and some instances where the ambulance would make a run and wouldn't necessarily get all the contact information for the person paying. So that was a big hurdle on some of these accounts. But now I would say almost all of these are just because you can't locate the person. And I think, so I also represent the collection agency and do their collections here. And I would say 4 or 5 a year. We get judgments for 4 or 5 a year for the city of Washburn ambulance. Some of those take then 10 years to collect on that judgment, but they do, this collection agency does go forward and actually get judgments on these cases, even though not all of them actually collect. So I would say that they do a pretty good job.
Okay, thank you, both of you, for that background. I know I've heard that before, but it's been a little while, so much appreciated. Anyone else have questions about this item? Seeing none, I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mary, second by Tracy, to write off the bills as outlined. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Page 2, we haven't had page 2 in a while. Next item, discussion and action on 2024 meeting, election and holiday calendar. Tab 12.
I'll make a motion to accept. Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Jared, to approve the calendar with those changes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Discussion and action on ordinance what ordinance is 23-009, modifying the ATV UTV regulations, and 23-010, modifying approved routes and trails for snowmobiles. This is tab 13 of your packet, and I see Chief Johnson has joined us. Thank you for coming over. Because I think an item that we maybe want to look at is the intent of these changes as brought forward initially by the chief. Would you want to say a few words about that to get us started?
Well, I guess my intent was never to open up the whole city for just anybody riding, going to IGA, going to the post office. My intent was to legally allow people to leave their residence to get to, get out of town and get to the trails and that sort of thing, or get to the lake for ice fishing. But I realized after reading Max's response earlier today and looking at the ordinance, that's kind of a byproduct now. We don't really have any way to enforce it. So then I thought, well, do we create another ordinance that allows us, some way to enforce it? But thinking about that, then we'd only be punishing the locals, because they would be the only ones. I don't know. I talked to the Ashland Police Chief tonight when I went home. Asked them, because they kind of have the same thing, just they can drive wherever they want. And he says they don't have any issues. And talking with Officer Saminsky too, we really don't have a lot of ATV complaints. So if that's what it is, I don't think it's going to be a big problem. And we do have, we've got the speed, we've got the stop signs, or stopping at the intersections, or riding in an extreme right. So we do have ways that we can, enforce things if people are abusing it and that sort of thing.
How would you suggest we go about educating people on what the ordinance says? Because I don't know if people realize they need to stop at every intersection, because they don't, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And I don't.
And realistically, it's not going to happen probably.
Are they going to pause maybe if they're aware that they're supposed to be stopping? Anyway, whatever the ordinance is, I don't know how to effectively get that out to the community, because those are, the people that are riding their ATVs around town are probably not the people that are checking the city's website or Facebook page for updated information.
That's state law anyway, isn't it?
It is.
So, I mean, if they're not understanding from the state.
So if they've gone through the class,
they should know.
They should know.
Yeah.
Tracy?
My concern is that I know UTVs have, lights, indicator directionals and brake lights and all that. But if ATVs are on all of the roads, shouldn't they also be required to have all those safety features on the vehicle?
They could obviously use hand signals, like bicycles and stuff. So ATVs have brake lights and headlights, and they're required to have them on. So the only thing they're missing is the signals.
And the difference in designating the roads as ATV routes, or the roads as ATV routes, as we've done, makes it so that ATVs can ride on them without being legally or street legal compliant, without having the turn signals. That's the main one they don't have. So if they did have those turn signals, like they and met all of the street legal requirements, then the ATV route designations don't matter, because they can drive on the streets.
With motorcycles that are
Yes,
legal.
yes. But yes, they do still, if you're turning or slowing, you need to have a brake light or you need to use hand signals. That is still required.
So are UTVs technically street legal?
Not all of them.
Okay, but some are.
Many of them are actually street.
Which is why you may have seen a UTV on the streets before they became legal. And then for the noise ordinance, and what was the other one, the speed. I think as we publish this information to the public, if this does pass tonight as is, it would be good for people to know, like, when should they call the police? you know, if they're seeing people that, I see people all the time that are going too fast or have a loud muffler. But if I called every time I saw that, I'd be calling you every day probably. You probably, dispatch probably doesn't want to hear from me every day. They're already tired. But, you know, I think it would be, if we could get a statement from you just about expectations and how people should address when there is an issue.
Well, I think it's gonna,
They don't
it's gonna
call
eliminate a lot of the
911, but-
issues. It's gonna eliminate a lot of the calls to us
Sure.
because people are gonna be able to go whatever roads they want to. So there's not gonna be that off-road issue, but, I mean, we're gonna have to do some social media stuff. We're gonna have to, officers are gonna have to, probably for the first year, are gonna have to be out there educating the people as we make stops and stuff like that. So, I mean, eventually, I think everybody will come around and all the locals will conform. And I think just in the beginning, it'll be a little.
And honestly, I think it's just a few problem people that I'm seeing repeat the same.
You know, and there are some people that we just kind of turn a blind eye to that have been riding, you know, in town and they don't have cars. I know a couple that don't have cars, they use ATV. They ride 10 miles an hour, they beat everything to the T, so I don't have issues. I think it's gonna be okay.
Tracy?
Yeah, I just wanted to know what, Ashland Police told you about the issues they do have with, all their streets are open to ATV, UTVs and.
Yep, that's what the chief told me today.
And are they having, how long has it been open?
It's been a couple of years, because I've been seeing ATVs parked on the avenues right by Main Street,
Okay.
which kind of was confusing to me, but
Did you ask them about any issues since they've been open?
he said he would have to talk to the guys, but he said he's not aware of any issues that they've been having. No complaints. I mean, you're always gonna have complaints by speeding or somebody with a loud muffler and stuff, but as far as being able to navigate through the city, he said there's no issues with that.
And I can comment on actual violations in City of Ashland, since we prosecute those as well. Since we've been city attorneys for the last 4 or 5 years, there haven't been any citations issued related to snowmobile or ATV use. That would be a concern. Obviously, we don't hear when they are issues that don't rise to the level of issuing a citation, but it's not like a large scale problem by any means.
Okay, Jen? Oh, sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
One more question here is, so I don't like how this ordinance reads. I think it's very confusing, and I would not support this the way it reads. And then my other concern is, so are we opening up all of the city roads to snowmobiles as well? We're not, are we?
Not with this,
Not
no.
with this. They will still follow the route and the trail out of town from their, what you said, so 10 is they can go currently now from their place of residence
To the nearest route.
to the nearest route to the trail.
Out of town, yep,
And that would stay the same.
correct.
Yeah, that's a state law. Or the state law just.
State law gives the
allows us
municipality
to,
the right to set that up,
And
and
we
the city
do
has
that.
chosen
Right.
to do that.
Right.
But they don't give us the right to do that with ATVs.
Correct.
And that's just confusing.
Yeah.
But they don't prevent it either.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
we've already been down that road. Jen?
Yeah, okay, well, 2 things. The first thing is, if I read an ordinance and I can't understand it fully, then I feel like I just, if I can't articulate it to, somebody, then and this is one of those. Like I couldn't, it was, some stuff was added there with the ATV, and I was like, well, are we doing it for snowmobiles too? So it is a little confusing. I get why we did it. I don't have a solution for it, but I definitely had questions when I read it. I was like, same thing. I was like, are we doing this for snowmobiles or not? It seems very mixed. So that's my first comment. My second one, where I got hung up mostly, I brought this to Scott's attention today, which I think the intent is where I get it, right? So under section 10.4.2, the intent of this section is to establish routes within the city of Washburn, blah, 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 may reach. Then it says, it is not the intent of this section that the streets or avenues established as this route be used for purposes other than leaving and entering the city. So to me, last month, I voted against this change because I felt like that's not what we were doing. And now the intent of this ordinance is entering and leaving the city. So I'm just confused, right? Because I'm fine with opening things for people to come and go beyond the trail system. I was not okay opening the city for use of this as a transportation mechanism to places like the schools. If you're 16, you can drive your ATV or UTV to school. So my vote was just on that, and now I'm confused.
So the intent section did not change.
Right.
And the intent of this ordinance is still just to allow people to use their ATVs wherever they need to go to get to those trails.
However, if somebody does use it to go somewhere else,
Within the city, now that we've passed, or when this is passed, opening all roads in the city to ATV use, you can't issue someone a citation, you can't stop that from driving anywhere else throughout the city.
Right.
But that was the same, I would say that was the same as it was before.
Yeah.
Where if two people in the city lived along a designated route, you could ride your ATV from one person's house to the next. Even though the intent was still only to allow access from a house out to those trails, so long as you were staying on a route, there's nothing you could do to stop you from using it.
But now it's within the whole city.
Yes.
And so earlier, when we talked to Chief Johnson, he said, that was still his intent and that he would do some education. But now I don't feel like that's kind of hard to do that in intent. I don't know. So I'm still a little confused of what.
Well, that wasn't my intent. It never was my intent, but after reading an email, I now realize that we don't have a way to enforce it. I didn't think that.
Right. So unintended consequences from my perspective, and that's why I voted against the last one.
Tracy.
So I guess my concern is this needs to go out then, this intent, it needs to be changed.
Well,
No.
it can
Why
stay.
can't it? But
Because that was the intent. However, yeah, really, there's nothing you can do to enforce that but it's okay to express your intent. There's no issue with that.
I think that my understanding, and we can take that out if you want, honestly, I think that intent provisions and ordinances are just unnecessary, but
I don't think it needs to be there.
the intent in designating all roads within the city as ATV roads was not to specifically intended to have people drive to the grocery store with their ATV.
Are we sure?
That was the general discussion. Maybe it wasn't, but
Maybe one or two people's intention
Yeah.
was for that, including people from the audience who wanted that.
Correct. That's my point, is it's confusing and it's hard to articulate to people when they ask you. That's all.
But
so this intent section can be used to help in discussions or considering this, can be used to help frame people's, I guess, expectations of what the city would like them to do. Ultimately, if people want to drive to the grocery store on their ATV, they can, but that's not what the city would want.
It's not enforceable.
Correct.
This is not enforceable.
No intent section in any ordinance is ever enforceable.
But normally the intent the ordinance would support the intent. And in this case, I would beg to differ that the ordinance does not support the intent.
But there's no real reason to remove the intent necessarily.
It's fine, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Tom, you're good?
Yeah.
So, do we have a motion on this or no? I don't think we do.
No.
So,
Can I make a motion?
yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that it be rewritten to be more clearly, readable. I don't think it reads well. I'm not comfortable, approving this as it's written.
Okay, first first let me just ask, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, second, so then let's clarify. Does this need to be clear to law enforcement? Or do we want it to be clear to everyone? You know, was it clear to you the way that?
It's clear to me, but I understand what she's saying, that, you know, the average person might not understand.
Okay. Max, do you have any?
Yeah, so what would you like to clarify? What parts aren't clear?
Well,
Just so that we know if it is
Can we
questioned, right?
separate out the snowmobile and the ATV?
They are completely separate now.
But they're together here. in this
Just the
ordinance.
definition of route and trail. They aren't together. These are two separate sections, two separate ordinances. I think that when I put in and what's in here for the changes isn't the whole ATV ordinance. It's not the whole snowmobile ordinance.
Oh, it's, okay.
It's just the parts that are changing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay,
there
well,
is,
that makes a
there's
big
still like a
difference then.
6-page, at least 6 pages on snowmobiles and completely separate
Okay.
section on ATVs. Yep, so snowmobiles are 10,
So we just have.
Title 10, Chapter 3.
Yeah. But for example, under definitions, right, you have snowmobiles and ATV routes, right? And then it says routes are state highways and city streets. And then it goes to pursuant, and then it references ATVs,
Mhm.
but that doesn't reference the snowmobile one.
So that's only the definition of a route. A route is on a roadway, a trail is on not a roadway. That definition of an ATV route and a snowmobile route is the same. A route is something that is on a roadway, a trail is something that's not on a roadway. It's not saying what these routes are in that section.
Except it kind of is by saying pursuant
Yes.
to ordinance 1042, it is saying that the ATV, but they are all routes. Do we need to say that, or can we just not say that there and then it's spelled out here?
We could take that out. And ultimately I could rewrite and include all the snowmobile or the ATV trails in the ATV section. The reason that I did it this way was because our current description of routes and trails doesn't differentiate which one is a route and which one is a trail. And it would require going through all of those and identifying which ones are on a roadway and which ones are not.
Yeah, I did that.
So I did this to clarify. When we have this list of routes and trails, to say that all the route designations are ATV for any roadway, but the trails that are identified here for snowmobile trails are still ATV trails. If you want, I can go through and
No,
look at
maybe
this
I just
list.
need to look at the whole thing together or something.
Yeah, I think it's more confusing when you don't see the whole ordinance.
Yes.
I mean, it is. It's so, it's just like, okay.
So if
It's
you
totally out of
want
context.
clarification, I can include this again with the whole.
Okay, so just, I'm looking over his shoulder here. So here we're listing, would this be removed in the new ordinance? The listing of all the
No,
routes and trails? But it would be just for snowmobiles?
no, because that's where
Routes
the
and
trails,
trails.
correct.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
if we want to differentiate and have a separate list for routes and trails, and I didn't notice that they were separate or included in the same list and not separated until when this came up. I can go through this list and figure out which one is a trail and which one is a route and create 2 separate lists.
I think
That would be desired.
that would be actually very good, I think,
Okay.
to list that separately for the snowmobiles versus the ATVs and UTVs.
I can say that honestly, probably 0 people ever read this
I was gonna
list,
say,
and they just look at the
anyone else
map
to make a difference.
instead. Because the way this
A
list
lawyer cost.
is laid out is very confusing as to what the roads actually are. But if you want, I can go back and identify which ones are trails and which ones are routes. and
Does
separate them.
does that matter for your purposes?
Just the map. Probably what we would use.
So
The
can we
statute
just-
requires us to list them out by road name for if we identify certain routes and trails.
Unless it's just all within the
Correct.
city.
So that's why they're listed out like this. But in practice, everyone just looks at the map. Because do you know, when you read this, Jackson Road from 8th Avenue West to the end at 10th Avenue West. who's gonna read that and know where that is? So look at the map
Well,
and see.
so this is the thing, couldn't we just say snowmobiles, ATVs, separate them out? For snowmobiles, you would say all roads, are open to, no, whatever the thing is about going from your home to
That's a
the.
separate section.
Okay,
That hasn't been changed.
so then all you have to list there are the trail, no, for snowmobiles,
Snowmobiles,
you would have to
everything
have the
stays the
routes.
same.
Okay, so you would have to do that, keep it for the snowmobiles, and then for ATVs, you would just list it separately and simplify.
For trails, correct. Which we can do. The map, as I told you before, the map is outdated.
Yeah.
Even according to the list that was placed.
So there'll have to be some communication between the city and Bayfield County Tourism on that.
If we want, I can go, to make it clear, we can change these, the way this is worded.
So right now, the motion is to rewrite. Is there any way?
I mean, I don't want to make this difficult for you, Max, but you indicated in your email that it was confusing.
Oh, yeah, it is. I think that I don't think it's confusing, I guess, in that respect, between snowmobiles and ATVs. The confusion is the way that we have to list out and describe the routes and the roads. That's what I think.
That's what you wrote.
The snowmobile?
Yes.
So why don't we just include snowmobiles? Why don't we just open it to snowmobiles as well?
Well, that's a whole separate.
Other subject.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so. Is it a whole difference?
Yeah,
It's a whole other
yeah,
ordinance.
we only approved it.
No, I know, okay, but, I mean, I don't see the issue, unless Chief Johnson can articulate maybe a reason why they don't. The police department wouldn't want snowmobiles.
I don't know that the police department has said whether they do or don't want snowmobiles, but I'm just saying that that's not on our agenda tonight to talk about.
Okay, but would it relieve the confusion?
I think maybe for me, I just have to look at it in context. Maybe that's my issue because I was just felt like we were running them together, but it sounds to me like, so we have section 10.3, and this is my fault because maybe I didn't go in and like look through the whole ordinance and put them together to see how they read, right? So section 10.3-8 is just definitions. And I think where I was
Well, A is only definitions. B is
all the routes.
all
for
the
snowmobiles.
details.
And it, yes.
Which is not,
It's not
included, correct.
which confused me.
Yeah.
Which, and that's the thing, like with A, I felt like we were just kind of putting them together. And so like when we put pursue it, we opened them all, I couldn't, under one, I thought we were doing that for snowmobiles. And so for me, that's that, the first piece, that's where I started to get confused. And I thought, I couldn't tell if we were doing that for snowmobiles or not. And then when I went over here, and then that's when I read the intent, and then I totally got like that.
So the bottom line is, as a machine operator, no matter what it is, it's their education to be done by themselves. We do the best we can in the ordinances, but if you want to know where to go with the snowmobile, then you look up the snowmobile. When you want to go to UTV, ATV, then you go there.
But
And if you screw it up, then the police force is there to educate and say.
And I didn't realize there was a whole other snowmobile section, Mary.
So.
Right.
So that is probably that's my bad.
And that's
Right.
where, I think if we just move this
That doesn't
clarification to, or put it here where we're detailing.
Where you're detailing with the ATVs.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
the
it's
snowmobiles.
both. It's both right now.
Right.
Would including snowmobiles, I'll ask it again, would that relieve the confusion in the ordinance?
Then it would be.
I think it's
a whole nother issue.
I understand that, so I'm asking a simple question.
Okay,
Okay,
are you
a
asking,
simple question.
are you
I'm
asking
asking-
that to Max?
Yes, if it was included in the ordinance to allow snowmobiles to move out, like ATVs and UTVs, would that relieve the confusion?
That would make it more clear. And I think when we revised, I think this was in 22. Yeah, when the city sold the small section to the ironworks, and that required us to change some of the routes. At that point, we made the decision, oh, you know, it's way easier to make ATV routes and snowmobile routes the same. Because up until that point, they were separate and described separately, and they're almost all the same, but there were a couple that were different. And at that time, made that decision, yes, let's just make them all the same. It makes it easier for everyone. But
So now we're making them different again by making ATVs open.
Thank you for
And the reason,
Yeah,
though,
of
one of the
course.
reasons that we made them different was because we couldn't do the same thing we could do with snowmobiles. Because with snowmobiles, we could say, you can go from your house to a route. With the ATVs, because of state statute, we could not do that. So we had to do
Well,
something different.
It's questionable whether we could.
Well, that was what we were told.
that there's no direct authorization to do that for
And so the
But there's,
council
but there's
voted.
also not a restriction. So we could have gone on a, you know, we could have stuck our necks out and done it and seen if we got sued.
But we wouldn't
That
get
was-
sued, we just
or-
wouldn't be able to enforce it if it was determined to be invalid.
So, but that, how do you get there is you go to court.
Yeah, if you issue a citation against to someone for using a ATV on not an approved route, and they challenge that citation and say, no, your ordinance is invalid.
Yeah.
So it's not.
So we could have
remember
tried.
that it's not potential liability to the city. It's just, there's no clear statutory or guidance on this that says you can do that for some of this.
And then I think,
for ATVs.
I think some of the desire by folks that were here for public comment were saying that they wanted to be able to go from their house to the gas station and not go to the trail, you know? And so then we ended up just doing all,
The council voted that way, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tom.
Is it possible this, the motion would be amended to include snowmobiles in this? And it's a done deal?
I don't believe that the current motion that's out there would be amended to include snowmobiles.
The motion is that it needs to be clarified, that it needs to go back to the drawing board. And, you know, just based on this discussion, it's very, you know, people, it's all over the map. I don't think we're ready to vote on this.
Well, and if I can address that, the discussion, I think, seems like we're rediscussing what the city's goals and desires are for opening up routes and streets, not discussing the interpretation of the ordinance as it's drafted.
Right. Thank you.
Well, both. I mean, I'm still saying for me personally, I was like, you know, like the definition section, to me, I was like, is it snowmobiles? And again, I would have to read it all together to see how it flows. I guess I was confused when I read it, if it was for snowmobiles or ATVs. And so, but that's, so both, to me, both was the clarifying of the ordinance of its, how it reads, and also the intent. But I've always been very clear. I think that that's why I voted no for it a month ago, because we weren't doing it under the intent in which the ordinance says, which is to go from purposes of leaving and entering the city. It was very clear to me last month that the council voted for more of a transportation piece of it, which is why I voted no for it. So, I mean, I feel like, again, I don't think that, I'm clear on that. I'm not clear on how it reads totally, but I have to see it all together.
So the motion, just to bring us back here, is to rewrite, but keep as is as far as the decision to open ATV and UTV routes, all the city roads, correct? But to rewrite it so that that is more clearly spelled out. Any other questions on that motion?
So we're asking Max to rewrite the ordinance.
Again, yes.
And we're asking him to do that with more clear and concise wording.
I believe that's.
I think I understand what is being requested.
Right.
Yes.
And can I ask what you think your understanding is.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do, I can say if this motion passes, what I will do is completely remove any reference to ATV from section 10, chapter 3, from the snowmobile section. I'm gonna add a new definition to the ATV section, again defining what a route is and what a trail is. And going to put in that designation that all roads are open as routes. And then I'm going to go through this list of 28 different road fragments that's in here, identify which ones of those are trails, not on a roadway. And I'm gonna retype those into the ATV trail section.
Well, isn't that wonderful to pay our attorney that
That
kind
is
of money
That is clear there.
for that?
So that will make it very clear that these are separated, that the trails are the same, that the definitions, and it'll just completely separate ATV from snowmobile regulations.
And it wouldn't be easier to just include snowmobile.
I already answered that.
I realize, right, I know you did, and I realize it's not on the agenda, but it is part of what we're speaking about here. So we're asking for clarification and ease of enforcement.
I don't think it's easier, it's not hard, it's totally fine if I need to revise this to state that. I think for enforcement and for legality, the way that it's written right now, does everything that the council approved previously. So I don't personally see a need to change it, but if you want
Okay, the part that
public
I
understanding, I
was
can do that.
concerned about is the intent. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense that I think the whole issue here is opening up the roads to ATV, UTVs are in the city of Washburn. And with that intent, it talks about, trails. I mean, it's really, I think you need to, like you said, you don't even need that intent.
Well,
Right, Max? I mean.
but do you want that intent? That's the question.
Well, it doesn't make sense.
We didn't talk about removing the intent. So
Yeah.
if you want to keep that as our intent, that's fine, knowing that it cannot be enforced. So,
why have an intent if it can't be enforced?
well,
It's
because
like, why
you're at
does it
least
need
telling
to-
people what you were intending for them to do.
But I don't think our intent is to that. I think it seems like a lot of the people here, it's just to open up the city streets to the ATV, UTVs.
Yep.
And you are agreeing with me, right? I mean, that's the intent.
Well, that's one person's intent. Is that everyone's intent? We don't know. We didn't go through that exercise to determine that.
Well,
So-
I voted against the motion because I didn't think that was our intent.
Sure,
And now it's in here, and I'm a little confused.
but that was there already. That did not
I
change.
understand, but I did not realize that when we were talking about it last month. And for me, I guess when I look at this ordinance, I just have to understand that ATVs and UTVs can go anywhere on streets and to routes or wherever they want to go. And snowmobiles have to stay and go to a route. That's it. That's all.
It just seems to me that the word snowmobile shouldn't be anywhere in the ATV, UTV ordinance. And on the flip side, ATV, UTV should not even be showing up in the snowmobile one.
So that's
it's like-
the motion, right, is to
Yeah.
clarify
Yes.
that. And Max is saying he can separate that
That's
out and make it
it.
very clear.
So you're okay with it?
Very
I
easy.
am. I don't want to see snowmobile with UTVs. I don't
Yeah.
want to see the word.
Okay.
I don't want to think.
So that's
about
the motion,
So-
is to clarify snowmobile versus ATV, UTV.
ATV, UTV only, snowmobile only, two separate ordinances. Boom.
And remove the intent.
Well, I don't think that's.
I don't think anybody gives a flying anything about it.
It's just, intent, we're not, that's not being discussed.
Well, if somebody needs to read the ordinance, an ATV or a UTV, they may read the intent and think that it is enforceable if they're not going.
So be it.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, if we're gonna do this, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and do it. I mean, if someone wants to drive to the grocery store to get some groceries, it's no different than someone taking a moped or a Harley down there to do it.
Sure.
I mean,
Understood.
I mean, what's the difference?
So,
I mean, Harleys are 10 times longer. Four-wheeler.
16-year-olds aren't riding around the house, but anyway, we can go
I'm
around.
just, what I'm trying to do is keep us on task, which is, we're going back to the motion, which is to clarify the ATVs versus snowmobiles in the ordinance. We're not talking about the
But
intent.
the intent was discussed, and I'm asking if whether or not in the motion that was,
Is that part
The
of
intent
your
of the
motion
motion was
is
to
to
remove
do
the-
anything with the intent?
Well, I was concerned about the intent, but mainly I was concerned about the mixing up of the ATVs, UTVs, and snowmobiles.
Okay, so can you just clarify for everyone, in your motion, are you asking Max to clarify only the ATV versus snowmobile, ATV, UTV versus snowmobile part of this? Leaving the rest of it the same? Leaving the intent in
I just
there.
don't wanna see snowmobile in this ordinance, bottom line. No crossover, no confusion.
So, yes, you're asking,
Exactly what Mary's saying, like separating the two out.
but don't mess with the intent, whatever it is, it is.
If what I'm hearing Max say is the intent is there, you can't enforce it, but this piece down here is what's enforceable.
Yes, and I didn't
So-
draft the original ATV ordinance, but I would guess that intent section was added, because it's very similar to the intent section on snowmobile residential access language, and that was added to the ATV section to try and mirror the two.
Gotcha.
But again, the statutes are different for snowmobiles and what we can do with snowmobiles and ATVs. So I think if this motion passes, what I would do, I'll get revised ordinances together, completely separating ATV, UTV, and snowmobile. I'm going to, for the next meeting, we'll have the whole section included so that there's not the confusion of what's included, what's not included. At that time, council can vote to approve the new ordinance as drafted. If you want to vote to remove the intent section at that time, you can. But I'm not gonna propose removing it right now.
Yep, clear.
Okay. With that, all in favor of Max rewriting to separate ATV, UTV, and snowmobile? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Don't act like me. Don't do it.
Okay, motion passes. We'll have this come back to us with maybe,
I'm gonna do a map.
Thank
You're
you.
gonna give me a copy, a clean copy of the street map. This is what the current one is in my ordinance. That's way outdated, but without the colors and everything.
on a better copy.
Yeah, just something that we can, put in there, because when I go through this list, I'm gonna map it out.
Can I also make a request to discuss including snowmobiles on that next
For
order
future agenda items?
Yes. during that discussion?
If I would have to ask Max's opinion, but I purposely tried to word the agenda to allow that discussion, because we were discussing modifying approved routes and trails for snowmobiles. Right? Well, I mean,
That would be allowed under, oh, this is noticed. Yes,
Today.
today,
Yeah.
yes.
I've been told today that it's not part of the discussion.
Well, we only discussed the motion. The motion did not include that. So,
Yeah.
if you wanted to make a motion to do that, you could have done that, but you didn't. So there was a motion to do what she made a motion to do.
Could there be a second motion on the topic?
Can you do a second motion on the topic?
Yes.
There could be another motion.
I'll make a motion to discuss adding snowmobiles to the utility.
I'll second that.
Okay, so
Chief
motion
Johnson,
by,
yes.
motion by Dave, second by Tom, to to discuss the possibility of making snowmobile routes on all the roads in the city. Got it. All, wait, so
So that
the
would-
motion is just for the discussion at this point.
Yeah.
So all in favor of having that discussion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So now we're in discussion of that topic.
Okay.
Yes, Mary.
So then why would we pay Max to draft the one with with?
You wouldn't. If
Because basically what he's saying is they're both gonna be put together in one order.
It's,
And that was-
it's better
that was
to
his
have the
first question.
discussion now, because otherwise.
Right,
it's
he's
go
gonna
on the
do
board,
it, and then,
potentially it would come back and we'd go, oh, didn't need to do that. Yeah, so,
So I guess
So
before
go
we
ahead.
go any further,
Yeah.
I would like to hear from Chief Johnson as to whether or not he sees an issue.
okay, Chief, do you mind answering that?
I don't know that I'm ready to answer that, because I haven't thought about it. My intent with the ATVs was just to make it legal for them to get to a route to get on town. Snowmobiles already had that, so I guess I'd have to think about that before I can make a decision on whether I'd support it or not.
Chief, do your officers intend to have this 45-minute discussion with every person that they pull over? I mean, I'm sitting here listening to this and it's like, you guys are nuts. Why don't we just, I mean, isn't this simple? It doesn't
What is
sound
your,
that
what is
bad.
your simple?
Wouldn't take us that long.
What is your simple answer, John? What is your simple?
I don't have a simple solution, but I could absolutely see this discussion with somebody going on and on. It's just, it's amazing to me that, we have to talk about it for so long with such minutia. Okay, so I've lived in Alaska and everybody uses a snowmobile or an ATV to go to the grocery store at -40. Okay?
No issue.
So,
That's what you're
I'm
saying.
sitting here saying, so what's the problem?
Okay, well, that could be your intention and your opinion, but I personally, I feel like we live in a different community than Alaska. And I feel like there's some unintended consequences and noise and safety with all of our streets and ATV and things being open to ATVs and UTVs. So this discussion to me is important because I feel like it has unintended consequences for how we want our community to look and the different transportation mechanisms that we use. And so I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about a lot of different things in council, so I wouldn't minimize what we're talking about, because it is important to some people.
I agree with you right straight down the line, okay? I'm trying to make a point that if this isn't a lot more clear and somebody gets pulled over, it is just like mud. I mean, it's.
Well, it will be more clear one way or the other, because either Max is gonna go and rewrite it to separate it, to make it very clear, or something's gonna happen here tonight that's gonna make it even more clear without having to do all that extra work. So we'll see how things turn out.
And I can say that, I think Chief Johnson mentioned this too, it's not gonna be unclear when they talk to people. They'll say, hey, you can use your ATV on any road, or you can use your snowmobile on the routes that are on this map.
Okay,
That's
why
the
don't we
explanation.
start there? I mean, why all of this, when that's where we should start?
We have to get there so that they know what to say. Okay, we're making those decisions that get us to the point where he can clearly state it to people.
I mean, that would have been really easy, to say that.
Well, we had to get there.
Our ordinances have
Over the river,
to
through
be
the
able to
woods,
be
Brandon's house.
read to be able to do that. So I guess the topic at hand for the discussion, I don't know. So to me, I have the same discussion points that I brought up with ATVs and UTVs being on all of our routes. I think like right now, they can get to where they need to go. So changing it, I'm not sure if we actually need to change it. And I guess maybe at our next council meeting, if we want to push it till then, and then maybe Chief Johnson can do a little bit of thought and research on it and bring us back some information.
And we could, now, let me just clarify, we made the decision to open the ATV road. ATV and UTV is able to use all the roads. So is that enforceable until we publish it or not?
No.
Okay.
It's not enforceable until it's published.
Okay.
Just to clarify, that's minus Highway 13 and the alleys, is that what?
Not the alleys, minus Highway 13
Highway
and
13
Bayfield
and
Street.
Bayfield
Oh.
Street. Yeah, Bayfield Street and County C.
County C, that's
Okay, I thought you guys included the alleys too.
No. So if we have Max postpone doing the work on the ordinance until after we have an agenda item, if there is a desire to have an agenda item where we have time to think about it, have Chief Johnson come back with his opinion, then that would save potentially that amount of time spent.
Yeah, if the council wants to vote on that at some time, David, then waiting.
I'm okay with waiting.
Yeah.
We've gone this far.
And not having Max, like you said, draft it and then have to redraft it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Okay, so I don't think we need to do anything there with the timeline, but anything else on the discussion
Well,
of?
the other discussion, just, about talking about all snowmobiles using all streets, is that snowmobiles have belts, and belts ruin roads. So, I think that's another implication that we need to think about besides.
All sorts of considerations.
There's all
Yeah.
sorts of considerations, and I think it's premature to include that in with the ATV all streets. I just think we need more time, and I think we need to hear from you on how you feel about that.
Yeah, this is only a discussion right now, so.
I do think snowmobilers won't go on roads without snow because it does ruin their snow machine. And it does, they typically, if there's not snow on.
If there's not snow, yeah.
Lots of them won't be able to
There's
go
not
on.
snow and ice, they're not going across with their fix.
Only to get gas.
They might
They
try.
Or get to the lake.
Or get to
I
the
mean,
lake, or they
because
go on the side
I see
and
it
try to
down
get
by
to the
me. Yeah, they're on blacktop.
They'll do it
Or
for short
They'll
periods
do
of
it for
time.
short periods.
Yeah.
Any other
But I
discussion,
will
Jared?
say, driving a snowmobile on the streets is much harder than driving an ATV.
Yeah,
Like
right.
steering those things.
And neither one of them is made to ride on the roads, as evidenced by someone whose tire exploded apparently on an ATV or UTV, going down Holman Drive and they ended up in the ditch or something.
Yeah, well, it was a mechanical malfunction.
Okay. But anyway, yes. Duly
Yeah, I
noted.
think that's a good point, that they're not really intended
I
to be
just
on
know
roads.
that it's really squirrely on the roads.
And because of that, people know not to drive on the roads unless you really are trying to get to a very specific place for a short distance. So I don't think it's gonna open up a huge can of worms with snowmobiles driving all over the city on the roads. It's only when there's snow on the roads and they're trying to get somewhere that people are gonna be out. Anyway,
That's much more succinct.
what's that?
That's much more succinct than a lot more we discussed about.
All right, any other discussion on this at the moment? Otherwise, I see consensus that Max will just pause on the rewrite until we have this item on the agenda for further discussion next month.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, everyone. Now, at this time, we are going to go into closed session. So I will have to ask everyone who is not on council to leave, and we'll have to turn off the recording.
You need to make a
And
motion.
is there a motion
I'll
to
make a
do
motion for a
that?
closed session.
I don't have the exact language for going into closed session, but for discussion on legal concerns with upcoming bonding, financing plans and projects pursuant to State Statute 19.85, 1 parent, 1 parent G, to confer with legal counsel for the governing body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation which is or is likely to become involved. So the motion was, sorry, who?
That's confusing enough.
Motion was by Tom, and the second was Jared. All in favor?
Oh, roll call vote, sorry,
And
hold on.
specifically in here, I think to include and allow Mary and Scott to also present for this discussion. Yes.
Oh, and to include Scott and I in the discussion.
Tony wants to stay.
And Tony.
I'm fine with that.
Tony's,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm fine with that.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
It's a
Roll call.
Oh, yeah, I keep doing that.
Mary McGrath,
Yes.
Tracy Snyder, Jen Mazias,
Sure.
Tom Nymus,
Yes.
Dave Anderson,
Yes.
John Hopkins,
Yes.
Jared Tremble.
Yes.
We are entering a closed session at 7:26 PM.
Recording stopped.
Is, the YouTube, okay. Yeah. Oh, look at that.
Christmas tree looks really pretty. A really nice view of it. Super pretty.
No, I think my fuel spectrum will off.
Pepsi sucks.
And there is a